I'm poet and writer Kay Spivey, and it's that time again! Time for Preptober! I just want to start off saying this can be kind of stressful. Preptober has become like such a thing to the point where it's kind of intimidating. It's almost become like its own stressful month, and then you've already had all of that stress leading up to NaNoWriMo. So if the idea of sitting here and planning your novel is like way too much to handle, totally fine. You don't need to prep for NaNoWriMo. The whole point is just to have fun, just to write, just to be a writer in general. Like, let's go into the history of NaNoWriMo. One dude, Chris Beatty, decided he wanted to try and see how much he could write in a month. And so he set himself kind of an arbitrary goal. He thought, well, I'll try and write 50,000 words in 1 month. And that month happened to be November, and he tried it and it worked out and he had a good time, and he kind of made it a challenge. More people started joining. It became a national event. Eventually it became an international event. Eventually he kind of let the whole brand go on to be run by other people and is no longer doing it anymore. But the point is, this is just an arbitrary challenge. Like, you don't have to create your masterpiece in November. You don't have to plan anything. You could write whatever you feel like. Like, this is a personal goal, personal challenge. You don't need to make it into something bigger than that. On the other hand, if you really want to sit down and like plan everything out and be ready to like hit the ground running, if that's something that makes you feel more secure, something that's going to help you, this is the perfect time to do that. For me, for this year, the novel I'm going to be writing for November is going to be my study abroad story. I talked about this at the beginning of the year and then it kind of fell off. Many things happened, in case you haven't been paying attention to 2020. Many other things happened, but I also decided to focus in on my cute romance story, which I got to a point and I just hit a roadblock with it, and so it's like 99% done and just needs a hair more revisions. But I'm going to set that one aside and I'm going to go on to this one, which I actually zero drafted already, which I will leave the link for my zero drafting video up above, my vlog. This whole concept came from when I read Again But Better, just didn't like it, and realized the reason that I didn't like it was really because what I wanted it to be was closer to my study abroad story. So I studied abroad in England and Lancaster University my senior year of college, and that made me the oldest person in like my friend groups there, because college is usually a 3-year thing, and so for me to be in my 4th year going to college there, people were like, wow. I went over there to study poetry. I studied both English and American poetry in England, which I thought was so interesting, and seeing the different perspective was incredible, and it was like 10 out of 10 experience. But there were also so many like really specific differences in the culture, differences in kind of the atmosphere. Like, one of the things that I just could not get over was how green it was, that it was a specific color of green that I had never seen before in my life. And I did grow up in the Midwest. I grew up in Colorado and then in Arizona, where there's a lot more brown, there's a lot less green. Moving up to Washington, I found that moss growing on stones is just something that happens when you live in a wetter climate. But in England was the first place I'd seen that. Moss growing on the stones. First place that I had fish and chips. I got into vinegar while I was there. I realized how much salt was in American food because I started having these intense salt cravings, and I was getting fish and chips and then basically dumping the shaker onto my fish, and it wasn't quite salty enough for me. Like, it was pretty crazy. But all of those really specific things that I remember, they're just like ingrained, and none of that was in her book. None of those like super different cultural things that like I couldn't get over when I was there. And I was only there for the Michaelmas quarter. I was only there for, what was that, like 3 months, and it was just so many things that were so different that I would have expected from a story like that weren't in there. And it was like, that's what I want. I want to read about those specific differences and those specific feelings and that like really visceral experience that I had. I wanted to read about that, but with like a little bit of a romance on there. And I was like, I can write that. So that's what I'm going to do for NaNoWriMo. I kept pretty extensive journals. I turned it into a zero draft. I just kind of put all the journals together in order and like found all the pieces that I'd maybe not Not all of them were published online, but some of them were because I was just putting them somewhere my parents could read them. I'm going to add in a little bit of a romance for me, just for fun. There were a couple of people I had crushes on while I was over there, and so I'm gonna just insert a little bit extra action in that, because I wasn't there too long. I mostly had like some really great friendships that I made with some really amazing people. I'm gonna be adding in some of that. I'm really excited. It's just gonna be fleshing out all of those journal entries into stories. I think changing the tense. I don't want it to read like as a journal entry, I don't think. I think I want it to read like a story, probably in first person, although I don't typically write in first person. I'll have to make that decision. So that's number 1 on the Preptober checklist. First person or third person. We'll see. I think probably it's gonna end up being first person because I feel like that's a more normal thing to use for that type of story. Changing it over to first person, and I'm just gonna go through and I'm just going to try and jam pack all the details, all the things I can't get out of my head that I still remember. I remember the sidewalks were kind of small and people drove like maniacs, and to cross the streets, since we really weren't used to crossing the streets like in downtown Lancaster, it was just like, okay, we're just gonna have to be brave and go for it, and we just had to be brave and like run across the street. People drove so different there than they did here. And like walking down, we used to walk from the university into Lancaster proper. I mean, I did so much walking, and I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time headed over there. I read Sense and Sensibility and thought it was a stitch. And I was the only person in my class where we read Sense and Sensibility who thought it was hilarious, and the teacher liked me because of that. I want all of that to be part of the experience. I want to be able to talk about how each dorm had its own bar. That was so cool. Each dorm had its own bar, and you just kind of like the normal thing in the writing group that I was in, if we had our like bar nights, we would just like, you could go bar to bar, you could choose the bar, but it was just so casual, and you would just get a drink for the evening and you just casually get to sit and drink. And I'd never had that experience. It was always like, oh, going out and getting drunk. And that wasn't how it was in England. Like, you just enjoyed time at a pub with your friends, and I was like, this is the drinking experience I want. And they had hard cider, and that was the drinking experience I wanted. I didn't want a beer, I wanted a hard cider, and to just sit and nurse that hard cider for like 4 or 5 hours sometimes and just talk with people who were into the same kind of weird stuff I was. I mean, I found someone else who had seen Repo the Genetic Opera. Yeah, I was the only one I knew who knew about that at the time, and I found other people who were even more obsessed than me. Like, it was a great time. I had such a good time studying abroad and learning the cultural differences and going all these amazing places. I guess I'm sitting here being like, my Preptober work is done, hurrah! Because I've experienced it, I've planned it. For the first time, I'm writing what's essentially nonfiction. I'm gonna fictionalize it, there's gonna be some cutesy romance, I'm gonna take out some things. I experienced a couple of panic attacks while I was there, and I think I am going to include that because I think it's important in terms of a study abroad story, but like, maybe not all of them. And I probably will also add some other conflict in. I'll probably take out all the conflict that was just simply my university and that university just butting heads on like things I needed to do. Like I wanted to get like, I think it was like four separate classes. I wanted to take 4 classes while I was there. It was like 3 poetry classes, and I don't remember what the other one was, but I can look it up and find out really easy. My university was like, that's the minimum amount of credits you can possibly take, and that university was like, that's too many credits, you have to take some off, you can't handle all of that. And I was just like, ah. The grading system is different, all of those kinds of things. I'll probably check that out. It's not that interesting. It might be like a minor point, but all of the experiences and the fun things, I really want to just delve into those and just like give you the experience that I had. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's the perfect time to write about it too. Like, you can't travel. I really wanted to go back to England before I wrote this story. Obviously that's not happening, but I'll go back someday. And I have lots of video footage. I have lots of raw video footage that I never even put up that I just need to like dig out of my hard drive and enjoy that. That's all I'm doing for Preptober this year. That's it. This was easy. Easy peasy. I'm just gonna write this story and enjoy it. My zero draft already exists. It's basically a glorified outline, but it also has like, it's journals. It was just journals I kept. And you know what? It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. And it doesn't have to be my masterpiece, but I think I have the structure together that I could totally work it into being my masterpiece. I'm at the point with doing NaNoWriMo where I don't really need to worry about getting the word count goal. Like, I can sit down in a day, if I need to get 2,000 words, I can get that. I don't really have too much trouble with doing that anymore. I can hit the 50,000 word mark, even if I'm having some struggle time. I've been doing this for what, like, a long time. Have I been doing this for 15 years? No. Yeah, I was 15 when I started. The first year I did NaNoWriMo, I was 15. And so I know I didn't do it for 1 year, but so I've done it for 14 years. The key points are, if you're doing NaNoWriMo, start strong. When you've got all that energy, write more than you think you need to. Write like 2,000 plus words a day, give yourself that buffer room, and then try not to skip days. When you skip days, you're just gonna feel the weight of them the next day. Like, having to write 3,000 words is a lot. So give yourself the buffer room. Try and write a whole lot more on your like days off or on your weekends. Steal the time if you need to, but sitting down and doing writing sprints, setting a timer. Try not to do too long. If you set a 30-minute timer, you may feel that's a lot of pressure. Try 10-minute timers. Try 3 10-minute timers. And just make sure your fingers are moving for the entire timer. Great way to grab words. Do that for like an hour a day, just setting the timers, giving yourself a little stretch break in between. Phenomenal. Race other people, do sprints with other people. The website is still a mess. I don't know if it's getting fixed, but it was as slow as it was last year when I tried to do I just tried to put in the title of my work. I hate the new website. I still hate it. I still hate it. They haven't fixed any of the issues I had with it. It is so slow, non-comprehensive. You click on the inbox and it just brings up blank, and then you have to go and like, it's sorted out into like the types of mail. I was like, no, just show me what I have. Like, why is it so non-intuitive? The whole thing is totally non-intuitive. I wish they hadn't made the website worse, but they did. But maybe I'll get used to it this year. Maybe it'll be less glitchy. It only glitched me back to the sign-in page one time, which is better than last year. And to be fair, it's the beginning of October when I'm filming this. Maybe a lot of people were logging on. Maybe they're just having normal glitches and they'll all be worked out. Do make sure that you have put in the information for your novel before 1st of November, because it's gonna be really slow on the platform on the 1st of November, probably on the 31st of October as well. So set up everything in advance. Be patient about putting your word count in on the first couple days. It'll level out as people drop off and lose interest. Just make sure you have fun. And I can't wait to share my novel with you. And if you want to be friends on NaNoWriMo website, I will buddy anybody who buddies me. So I am SK Suncloud, just SK Suncloud, and I'm happy to be friends. I hope your October has been going really well, and I hope you are as excited as I am for this next month. It's coming! Time to write 50,000 words! Okay, bye.